So, as a few of you may know, a while back I named the Dual Berettas as my pick for the worst guns in CSGO.
Boo! You suck!
Of course, now that the guns have been buffed and somewhat stabilized, the question is, do they still deserve the spot as the worst guns in CSGO? Okay, so let's start by taking a look at what exactly Valve did to buff the Dual Berettas. Specifically, the weapon armor penetration ratio increased from 1.05 to 115, and the range modifier increased from 0.75 to 0.79. Honestly, it's really not that much of a buff, but it does actually improve the Dual Berettas. Somewhat. While ultimately a minuscule upgrade, these buffs do make the Dual Berettas more effective on pistol rounds. The increase in armor penetration and effective range give it a bit more punch against Kevlar and provide the Dual Berettas with the much needed capability to one-hit kill helmetless enemies at longer ranges. However, while this buff does make the dualies a bit safer to buy on pistol rounds, it still doesn't address the glaring weaknesses of the pistol itself, that being the pitiful armor penetration, among other things, in comparison to the other pistols in its price range. Again, for $500, you're much better off buying a 5.7, Tech 9, or P250, as those pistols are able to one-hit kill helmeted enemies at close range, in addition to generally being better overall. Although, to be fair, I don't think any pistols besides the Desert Eagle should be able to one-hit kill helmeted individuals, but that's another video altogether. Anyways, now that there's a bit more acceptance of the Dual Berettas, I wanted to expand on my opinion on how best to use them. Now, I won't be addressing specific statistics as I've pretty much covered most of the important ones in my previous video, which you can watch here if you'd like. But instead, I'll be focusing more on the playstyles required for success with the guns, in my opinion. It's probably no surprise, but I do think that the Dual Berettas are best used as spam weapons. As I've said before, the dualies are best used as stationary ambush guns. The biggest strength of the Dual Berettas is within its ammo capacity, as it technically has the largest magazine size of all pistols. Where other pistols may run dry, the dualie's 30-bullet magazine affords you plenty more chances to eliminate multiple enemies in one sitting. But of course, things don't always go as expected. Oh, come on. Now, you'll notice that I said stationary guns, because in comparison to every other pistol, besides the Desert Eagle, the Dual Berettas have the worst movement accuracy while firing. But even with that said, because of the nature of pistol rounds, you'll still be doing a fair amount of running and gunning. You just need to adjust your aim accordingly. How do I mean? Well, first let's take a look at the spray pattern of the Dual Berettas. While stationary, you'll notice that the Dual Berettas have a fairly decent grouping, with the first two shots being right on the money. But as you can see, the vertical recoil is pretty substantial. Check it out in comparison to the Tech 9's vertical recoil. Of course, while moving, this recoil and spread is amplified, to the point where it's very inconsistent. So my best advice for spraying while moving is to aim a bit below your target after the first two shots. How far you need to compensate depends largely on your distance from the target, but a good rule of thumb is to center around the chest or stomach, spam mouse one, and pray to RNGesus. On a side note, while the spray does float a tiny bit to the right, it's really not worth adjusting to, as most of the time you'll either be moving, switching through targets, or up close and personal. So just focus on centering around the chest and you should be fine. For longer ranges, I suggest 2-shot bursts, as the dualies are fairly accurate while standing and to some extent strafing. However, I do recommend trying to prioritize close-range engagements to give yourself the best chances of survival. All in all, the newly buffed Dual Berettas are certainly better than they were before, but outside of pistol round engagements, there still isn't a whole lot of reason to use them over the superior alternatives. Also, from what I've experienced, I can't say I've seen more people buying into the dualies, but I can say that there are a lot less people yelling at me for buying them. Listen, I like the Dual Berettas, and nothing feels better than making a big play on pistol round with some of the worst pistols in CSGO. So yeah, I don't think that the Dual Berettas are the worst guns in the game anymore, but they're still close.